A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. In a bold statement that has stirred the waters of international trade relations, President Donald Trump has characterized the European Union as nastier than China, shifting the focus of his ongoing trade war. This assertion comes just hours after the United States and China reached a temporary agreement to pause their escalating tariffs for 90 days. During a press conference, Trump expressed his dissatisfaction with the current trade dynamics, particularly criticizing the EU for not contributing its fair share. He stated, "The European Union is in many ways nastier than China. Okay, we just started with them." Trump highlighted the significant trade imbalance, noting that the EU exports approximately 13 million cars to the US while the US exports none in return. He also pointed out that the EU's agricultural products flood the American market, while the US struggles to sell its goods in Europe. This, he argued, gives the US leverage in negotiations, which he believes has been mishandled in the past. As part of his efforts to address domestic concerns over high drug prices, Trump announced a sweeping executive order aimed at reducing prescription drug costs in the US. He has set a 30-day deadline for pharmaceutical companies to lower prices, threatening to implement a new rule that would tie US medication prices to those paid in other countries if an agreement is not reached. Trump stated, "Big Pharma will either abide by this principle voluntarily or we will use the power of the federal government to ensure that we are paying the same price as other countries." Critics have long argued that Americans subsidize drug costs for patients in other nations, where health systems negotiate lower prices. The president's comments on the EU's treatment of pharmaceutical firms were particularly pointed, describing their practices as brutal. He emphasized that every country should be held to the same pricing standards, insisting that the EU must pay more for its healthcare products. Trump projected that his new measures would lead to a dramatic reduction in drug costs for American consumers, estimating cuts of between 50% and 90%. While the stock market reacted positively to the news of the US-China tariff pause, concerns linger over the long-term effects of ongoing trade tensions. Wall Street saw a significant uptick, with the S&P 500 rising by 3.1%, the Dow Jones by 2.7%, and the Nasdaq by 4.2%. Danny Hewson, head of financial analysis at AJ Bell, acknowledged the day's gains but cautioned that investor confidence remains shaken by the uncertainty surrounding future tariffs. Both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq are significantly higher than they were before Trump brandished his reciprocal tariff charts on the White House lawn at the start of April, she noted. However, she warned that the elevated tariff levels could still weigh down company profits and consumer spending. In Europe, the EU is bracing for a potential no-deal scenario in its trade negotiations with the US. European Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis stated that the European Commission is currently analyzing the implications of the US-UK trade deal on EU interests. He reiterated the EU's commitment to pursuing a negotiated solution with the US within the 90-day window established by the recent agreement. Despite the temporary reduction in tariffs between the US and China, concerns about economic growth persist. Federal Reserve Governor Adriana Kugler remarked that while the pause in tariffs represents an improvement, the overall tariff levels remain pretty high. She warned that these elevated tariffs could still lead to increased prices and a slowdown in economic growth, although not to the same extent as previously experienced. Former U.S. diplomat Craig Singleton suggested that the urgency of the recent U.S.-China agreement indicates both nations are facing economic pressures. He noted that China is grappling with rising unemployment and declining export orders, while Trump is motivated by the need to appease markets and secure a political win without relinquishing his negotiating power. Meanwhile, the FTSE 100 index in the UK climbed to its highest level in a month, buoyed by the positive sentiment from the US-China agreement. However, shares in pharmaceutical companies took a hit following Trump's announcement regarding drug pricing. London's top index finished the day up by 0.6%, while European markets also saw gains, with France's CAC 40 rising by 1.4% and Germany's DAX index up by 0.2%. Chris Beecham, chief market analyst at IG, commented on the renewed market rally, stating that the 90-day pause has injected new life into investor sentiment. He noted that while the market is responding positively, companies remain cautious due to ongoing uncertainties that could affect future spending decisions. Patrick Kaiser, a portfolio manager at Brandywine Global, echoed these sentiments, emphasizing that while recent developments have alleviated some fears, businesses are still grappling with uncertainty. As negotiations continue and the 90-day pause unfolds, all eyes will remain on the evolving landscape of international trade and its implications for the global economy. The coming weeks will be critical in determining whether the current thaw in trade tensions can be sustained or if further escalations are on the horizon. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.